Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another of these brand new Aulita Heroes figures. Again, there's quite a few that have come out recently, and I've been loving each and every one, so I'm extremely excited to bring to you today the Allosaurus. And you might be thinking, well, didn't we already have an Allosaurus? Yes, we did. We had a very large version of an Allosaurus with a play set, which is a phenomenal set, honestly. If you have not seen my review of that, I highly recommend checking that review out because that play set is incredibly cool. But we now have an individual standalone release for the Allosaurus, and it is at a bit of a smaller size, kind of, fitting in with the newer size range of these figures. But you can see the box again has this super cool, very old school style artwork here on the front. Love that. We've also got the Aulita Heroes logo and everything down here. I just love the fact that they kind of produce these in such an old school style. You always have like the vintage style dinosaur, but even the presentation here with the box again is pretty old school. So let's pop the box open and check it out. So as always, straight away we've got a really cool card, something that they've begun implementing into the newest round of figures, and I've been loving it because I just love the idea of collecting cards and stuff like this. And you can see again, really nice image there. Again, that same image we had seen on the front of the box, but I just love the artwork from Aulita Heroes. And then we've got the Allosaurus itself, and as you can see, definitely a lot smaller than the older one was, but equally as impressive. It is a very cool looking version of the Allosaurus, and I really like the entire design of this one. It's just almost looks like a horned lizard sort of, as far as like the texturing, the design and everything, which I think is really neat. But just in general, we've got some very nice paint apps, and again, a super cool, very old school, but obviously exaggerated and more of an Aulita Heroes style version of an Allosaurus. So, as always, let's jump to a closer look at it right now. So, starting up here at the head sculpt of our Allosaurus, you can see it looks really cool, and one of the, things I think that stands out the most right away is something that I really like about these Aulita Hero figures is they often give them lips, and not all the time, but you can see we do have lips for our Allosaurus, which is really quite cool. But you can see on top of the lips, you've got some very nice texturing, obviously a very exaggerated look as a whole to the figure because it's, fitting the Aulita Heroes style, which I've said many times is almost like a crazy 80s horror movie vibe. Like, it just is like so unique and so different than any other dinosaur product out there currently, and I really love that aspect of them. You can see the nostrils sculpted out here in the tip of the snout. You can also see the eye in there is quite nicely painted, and you've got quite a bit of variation of color here to the face. You have numerous different variations of browns as well as blacks and stuff all over the place. It's always hard to keep up with how many different colors you see on an Aulita Heroes model because they just give you so much as far as the paintwork. You can see we've got a nice articulated jaw. Once you look inside the mouth, you can see the tongue. You can also see the teeth. Same deal here as far as the teeth go for the upper side. You can see the teeth in there. And specifically here on this side, you can see how the teeth are sort of like individually sculpted and stuff. And even that has that kind of dark and gritty and very almost creepy kind of style to these figures, which I really like. And that jaw works very nicely. You can see it can pretty much go wherever you want it. So very nice as far as that goes. You've got the crests here for the Allosaurus up on the top of the head, and that's where you start to pick up that very kind of heavily, almost armored style scaling, that very horned lizard style scaling that we have. You can also see we've got a spot of articulation right here where you can move that head around very nicely. As you move back a little bit further into the neck, you see we get quite a bit of bulkiness to the neck of the dinosaur. You can also see a striping pick up, as well as, again, some really nice browns. I really like the tones of brown that are used on this. And, of course, those very spiky scales as we move down. You've got another spot of articulation right here in the neck, which allows some really nice posability, especially left and right turns are really smooth in that area. You've also got a little floater right here down at the bottom just to kind of, again, complete the neck area of the dinosaur. As you move down, you've got more of those really bumpy scales moving along the back, those kind of almost like ridge-like scales. You've got quite a bit more variation of color, as well as that striping effect. Continuing to move down, you have another area of articulation here in the midsection, which can move all over the place. And yes, these areas can swivel as well, giving you lots of posability options. As you move down into the arms, you continue to have kind of like a rough and rugged looking skin texture to the Allosaurus. You've got a spot of articulation right there in the shoulder, which can go forward and back and out away from the body a little bit. And then as you move down, you've got a really nice looking sculpt for the hand. You do have 3 digits for our Allosaurus, but even those look a bit different than what you usually see on an Allosaurus, which again shows off the unique style of the Aulita Heroes brand as a whole, and why I feel like they really need a live action movie. I would just absolutely love to see that. You can see the nails are sculpted and also painted with a bit of a glossy black. As we move back here into the stomach region, you can see some finer texturing here to the side of the stomach, but obviously as we lead up toward the back, the scales become quite a bit more interesting as you lead up again to the point where they again have that horned lizard sort of a look. As you move down into the thigh, you see the same thing. Again, the scales start out much larger. The skin texture starts out much larger. As you move down, it becomes more and more fine the further down you go. You've got a very dark tone running down the front of the thigh, down through the course of the leg, and more articulation as you move back. You can see again we've got the hip articulation as well as the knee, and now the knee has articulation above and below, so you can really get some nice posability. You've got another spot right down here as you lead down from the calf, which you can see a big bulging calf muscle, and then another spot down here in the foot, which can move all over the place very nicely and also can swivel. And then as you lead down into the toes, you can see the toes are sculpted pretty nicely, and you also have articulation in the toes, which is very impressive to have that much articulation even on the toe here in the back. And you can see the nails again have a nice genuine sharp look to them, again painted with that black. And then we lead back up here toward the tail, and as you lead out, you've got another spot of articulation right here, which can move all over the place. And then as you lead out further, you've got 2 more as you lead toward the tip of the tail, which allows, again, quite a bit of posability with your figure and nice display options. But you continue to have that very horned lizard style sculpting to the skin texture as you move out, those nice variations of browns as well as that striping effect. Very different style as far as the skin texture goes. For the underside of the dinosaur, you can see there's some nice washes that have been applied, like some dark washes, but also this very nice light tone that runs down here through the underside. And I like the way it looks. It has that genuine, almost kind of like it would be like a soft sort of a feel to it, where like, you know, something you would see commonly on a lizard or something like that, or even a snake. Kind of gives you the same feel as that. Of course, you're not really going to see much difference over here on the opposing side. It's going to be pretty much the same thing, same style of sculpt, same style of paint, considering it is a fully posable figure, fully articulated. You know, it's up to you to kind of move the parts around and create your display. But an incredibly cool, updated and different version of the Allosaurus compared to the one in the play set, which is much larger. You now have, again, this much more smaller, but still equally as awesome version of the Allosaurus. Now, as far as a size goes, that's going to be kind of dependent on you and the way you pose it, but in the position it's currently in, lengthwise, oh no, I just slid it over because the tape measure pushed it. Lengthwise, a little over 10.5 inches, actually more so, I would say approaching 10 3/4, or around 27 centimeters. And then for a height, about 5.25 inches, or right around 13.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Aulita Heroes Allosaurus. And you can see the Allosaurus is a much smaller version. If you can recall the older one, definitely a lot smaller this time around, as you know, you can see it's a little bit smaller than Mr. Papo T-Rex. I would actually say pretty similar in size almost, but like a little bit shorter, just like body mass wise, they're not too far off. I would say slightly smaller than Mr. Papo Rex. Then for another comparison, we have a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus stepping in here next to the Aulita Heroes Allosaurus. Then if you are familiar with the Mojo Fun brand, here is their Allosaurus next to the Aulita Heroes version, just to kind of give you at least one random Allosaurus comparison. You can see, again, a good bit of difference in size. The Aulita Heroes version, even if it's smaller than the older one, is still a little bit larger than the Mojo Fun version of the Allosaurus. And then for one final comparison, here is the initial version of the Allosaurus next to the newest version. And you can see on top of massive difference here in size, you can see a different paint scheme. You know, we have a bit of a different, at least tones of color used for the newer one, and a little bit of a different appearance to the mouth, because the older one here had an opening there in the mouth so you could put like a harness in it, whereas the newer one does not, because it's not part of a playset like the older one was. So you can see how Aulita Heroes kind of, you know, changes things a little bit when it comes to their figure, and there's no laziness. It's not like they just repeated it and decreased the size. They did resculpt it a little bit and alter the figure quite a bit to re-release it with this newest version. So this brand new Aulita Heroes Super Articulated Allosaurus is yet another super cool figure. I've absolutely been loving this newest round of figures, just loving the fact that they've created so many figures all at once here and just kind of bombarded us with awesomeness galore. And we recently had taken a look at a Tyranno Titan, and now we have the pleasure of checking out an Allosaurus. So I'm kind of trying to go like back and forth between carnivores and herbivores here with these reviews. So we are now back to the carnivore side of things with the Allosaurus, and I think this one is really nice. Again, sculpt wise, it looks just as gorgeous as the original release of the Allosaurus did. It has that dark and gritty feel, but also obvious inspiration from a horned lizard, which I really like. I think it looks super cool on the Allosaurus. Very nice design overall. So on top of the extremely cool design, we've also got some very nice fine detail throughout, which you always see. And Aulita Heroes has actually recently begun improving the quality of their figures when it comes to kind of like cleaning them up a bit. So the newest figures that you would see, like if you go purchase this, would be even cleaner than the one that you see here that I have now in my collection, which is really cool. But on top of that, you've got really nice paint apps, again, with the beautiful variations of browns throughout. And there is quite a bit of difference when it comes to those browns as you move through the course of the figure. You've also got that really nice striping effect. And I'm always just super impressed with how good the paint apps are on these Aulita Heroes figures. Like, all the time, they just give you so much color variation. It must take forever to paint each and every one of these figures, and I must commend them for consistently doing such a great job on the paint apps and how good they look on the figures and all the variation of color that they use. Again, just really showing that the Aulita Heroes brand as a whole takes a lot of pride in their work. And of course, on top of everything, you've got lots of articulation, allowing you to pose the figure pretty much any way you want, which is always really fun. Love super articulated figures, especially when they have a vintage style to them, which is exactly what this Allosaurus has. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on the Aulita Heroes Etsy shop, as well as a link to the Instagram account of Aulita Heroes, where you can head on over there and start following them right now so you can stay up to date on everything they are releasing. One way or another, absolutely recommend picking up this Allosaurus, so make sure if you are interested you do that, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.